Hello traders, in today's video I'm going to be sharing a few spot strategies that I have been using the past few months. Spot trading is when you use no leverage, no borrowed funds, no margin, and you're just trading Bitcoin that can be transferred anywhere basically. This kind of strategy is completely different than trading something like perpetuals or borrowing money to long or short Bitcoin. All right, so let's dive into how this works and how you can make money. First of all, in an uptrend in my investment account that I hold BTC, my goal is to make USD. My goal is to increase my USD, typically, well, almost always in an uptrend, that is the goal. So I basically look to buy at points of high probability that price will rise and sell at points where there's high probability that price will fall. A really quick, silly example, or really quick, good example of this would be, let's say I'm long Bitcoin and price is rising on a bunch of euphoria. Then after a bunch of volume, just a bunch of rising, we get this period of a prolonged consolidation. Probability-wise, I tend to believe that it's a lot more likely in that kind of scenario that in the short and medium term, price is probably going to fall. If we see a bunch of just eager buyers, then everything just stops and price goes flat. It's really not a great sign for an uptrend. These kinds of scenarios, I really like to sell in consolidation after this kind of event occurs, and then just try to buy back lower, to continue trading the uptrend. That's typically what I like to do. Now, a downtrend is what we're going to be focusing on today, and the exact strategy that we're going to be focusing on is how do we increase our BTC during a downtrend. Okay. The first thing that typically occurs in a strong downtrend is the shock stage. That's what you're seeing is labeled as 0.1. This is when you see a rapid move that seems out of nowhere. A lot of fear, a lot of panic, people just selling, people saying, oh, I think it'll go to 30, I think it'll go to 28, blah, 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 and the price just dips. Everyone has a different strategy when it comes to spot trading, but mine is typically in these kinds of scenarios to do nothing and to wait for stabilization. The stabilization stage is the second stage, and typically what happens is price goes flat or just slightly rises after a very strong fall. So price just stays flat, just kind of does this. I like to wait till this occurs because this is really the spot where I begin to look to increase my BTC. If I'm bearish or I think that a bunch of people are bullish, one of the best strategies, if not really, I think it probably is my number one strategy that's made me the most Bitcoin recently, is to sell Bitcoin during the consolidation stabilization stage and then put bids right below the consolidation pattern. A quick example of what does this look like, because I actually did do a trade this morning that went pretty well. So we have Bitcoin here, and when I went to bed, you can see right here from the crosshair, price was around here-ish on the 1 hour chart, and I was actually able to sell, and then I just put bids right around this area, right below these lows and right below this wick low. And as you can see, what did price do? Exactly what I wanted to do. It wicked low and then went right back up. This was just a really easy way for me to increase my Bitcoin because all I had to do was I didn't do anything during this stage, which was the shock stage where everyone was kind of shocked at what was happening. And then I waited for it to stabilize. I then sold because I was pretty confident that price had a lot more selling in it, especially the lack of volume. It just did not look at all like price wanted to rise. If price was going to rise, I was expecting to see just more of a V shape or just more buying simply, and there just wasn't much going on. So I sold here and I bought back, I think it was like somewhere between 1% to 2% lower and just increased my BTC. This really is one of the best strategies that I've done recently, but everyone has their different spot trading strategy. But this kind of thing has worked pretty well, especially when you get a bunch of selling and then a little bit of stabilization. Typically, price tests the lows before going higher, typically. Of course, that's not always the case in a downtrend, but it's just something that I've noticed recently and something that's made money for me. Okay, so that is typically how I like to play the stabilization / consolidation stage. Now, point 3 is 1 and 2 can just continue as price goes lower. What can end up happening is price stabilizes and then just you get another stage of fear and shock. And price just goes lower, and then it stabilizes. This is really going to continue happening until you get capitulation at point 4. That's typically going to be a V-shaped reversal. So I covered this in a video previously, but just to tell you guys what I like to see as typical market bottoms, there's 2 types. Typically what I like to see is an ascending triangle or a V-shaped reversal. What are those? Well, I will go on the chart and I'll show you guys. So starting with a V-shaped reversal, you can see this really on any time frame, but a beautiful one right here was, this was a long, prolonged downtrend, right? And during this downtrend, there were a lot of great opportunities to increase our BTC by basically identifying a bunch of selling in the stabilization stage, buying back a little bit lower, selling into another stabilization stage, and then buying back lower and repeating basically until price rises. And then what we can see here is you get this V-shaped reversal that was just incredibly healthy and good for an uptrend. And you see this basically all over the place. Like another example was right here at a low that was much lower. This is a classic right here V-shaped reversal. This is exactly what typically begins a long uptrend, right? So that is the first, or really the second thing I look out for. The other typical bottom pattern that I've noticed besides V-shaped reversals is upward pressure, i.e. Typically an ascending triangle. An ascending triangle is when price is making higher lows and flat highs, and it takes the shape of a ascending triangle. Now these aren't as common, I would say, but when they do occur, I've found that they do tend to work pretty well. Let's see on the daily chart if I can point out any. If I remember right, there was one on the daily chart. Or is the ascending triangle a little bit more short-term? Yeah, I think it is a little bit more short-term, like the 5-minute. But I think you guys all know what an ascending triangle looks like. But those are the 2 types of market bottoms that I typically see. So basically my strategy and what I like to do is I wait for a bunch of panic selling and I do absolutely nothing. I then see if I think that there's not a lot of buying and sellers are still quite hungry to sell. Typically what I'll do is if price is consolidating long enough, I'll sell in consolidation at the midpoint or maybe wick high. And then I will put my bids right below the consolidation stage to increase my BTC. Now, this kind of strategy, you will increase your BTC when your orders get filled, but do know that your USD notional value will probably fall because it's a downtrend. That's just something that you do have to be aware of. It's very easy in an uptrend to increase your USD, but it's a bit harder to increase your BTC. It's very easy in a uptrend to do that. It's very easy in a downtrend to increase your BTC because you can just sell and buy back lower as sellers just continue pushing it lower. But it's harder to increase your USD because the majority of the movements are lower. So that's typically why I don't, try to increase my USD on a downtrend by trying to buy at what I think might be, the lowest point and sell higher to try to increase USD. Typically, I just look to sell during the downtrend in a stage that's not panic, and then just buy lower as the panic continues. That's just something that I like to do. And I think some of you might be wondering, or you should probably be asking is, what do you do if you're wrong? What would I do if we get that kind of stabilization stage of consolidation, just price going flat, and then price rises? Well, that's why with this strategy, what I typically do is I never trade 100% one way or the other. So let's say we have 10 BTC. I'm not going to sell 10 BTC, then bid 10 BTC lower. What I'll do is I'll sell 5 BTC, just wait to see what happens. I'll put a bid of 5 BTC right below the local lows to try to increase my Bitcoin. And then if I see a little bit of price movement higher, I'm probably going to sell the other 5 BTC and then put bids lower. But if I really think that we're looking bullish, then I would just cut my losses and just buy back. That kind of strategy, as simple as it might sound, it does work pretty well. Another note I want to make of an advantage of spot trading in this kind of strategy versus futures trading, which is completely different, is really that you don't have to be right a lot of the time when you spot trade. Why is that? Well, if you're on 5 to 10 times leverage, you can't afford to be wrong, especially on 10 times leverage. Because let's say you long at 39,600, you buy, and then price plummets, like it just did on that chart on May 5th. You're kind of screwed. You're going to get liquidated, or a stop loss that was much lower is going to get hit. Let's reverse it now. Let's say that you buy 10 Bitcoin at 39,500 for $395,000. You do that, and then price plummets, and you say, oh, that's unfortunate. What you can do now is you can try to increase your BTC even though your USD value is down. And do you see how these strategies are completely different? In the futures example, you cannot do that. I mean, you could sell and then try to buy back lower, but you've already lost so much money because you're on leverage that it's going to be very hard to recoup that account. But if you're spot trading, you can, let's say you sell at 36,500 and then rebuy at 35,500, for a little $1,000 cushion to get you more BTC. Well, there you go. Now you have like 10.4 BTC, and you started with 10 BTC. So these are really good ways that you can generate more Bitcoin safely while doing spot trading. And remember, the typical signs of a downtrend, and you don't have to do exactly what I do. This is just something that works for me. But typically in any stage of rapid volatility and fear and panic, I don't have a great history of trying to time it. When price is just rapidly falling and I buy, it tends to keep rapidly falling. When price is rapidly falling and I sell, I then get a BART pattern where, you sell at a bad price and price goes up without you. That's why it's just so much better to wait until price just chills out and stabilizes. Look at the structure. If you want to, you can sell, then put bids lower so that stop loss is getting hit. You get filled and you increase your BTC. That kind of strategy it's worked well for me, and hopefully it'll work well for you guys. And of course, in an uptrend, a lot of this would just be reversed. This kind of advice. Not financial advice, but just, words on a page, of course. So that's going to do it for really what I like to do during a downtrend. Basically, I'm looking to increase my BTC by looking for very high probability points where price is going to probably go lower. I don't even use many indicators besides maybe sentiment and open interest, like looking at how traders are feeling. And just try to be optimistic. Not about price, but do be optimistic in the sense that it does suck if you buy BTC and price falls in spot. But know that there's so much, there's so many new opportunities you can do to now increase your Bitcoin. So that when price goes back up, you now hold more Bitcoin. And let's say that, in an uptrend, there are just so many opportunities to make money in an uptrend. Buying and selling higher. And if majority of moves are higher, it's really not that hard to, increase your money, increase your USD or whatever fiat or tether you use. So that's going to do it for this video. If you have any questions or just need a little bit more on really what it's like to spot trade, I have a course called Gravity where I analyze price action and volume and give very likely points of reversal and continuation. So if you want to check that out, that will be linked in the description below. But until my next video, happy trading, stay safe, and increase your BTC.